Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, thank you for so many of you for joining. It's been a long 2 days. We've heard a lot of inspirational information, and I appreciate you hanging around for hopefully the best bit. So anyway, good afternoon. My name's Nick Bone. It's my great pleasure to be here today among so many distinguished speakers and attendees to provide the fourth and final keynote of the day on the subject of Abu Dhabi as a FinTech Nexus. It's been an amazing 2 days, as I've said. I've been inspired by so many of the panels and presentations. It's my great honor to be here, as it is for my team from EquiChain. So, as I said, I'm the founder and CEO of EquiChain, the parent company of EquiChain Exchange, or EQX, which you may have heard this week has just been accepted into the second cohort of the ADGM Reg Lab, with a view to building a totally new kind of stock exchange based on blockchain technology, taking all the best principles of the ICO concept, putting them into a regulated environment so that we keep all the governance and security of the investment markets that we're used to from traditional IPOs. It really is a game changer, and we're thankful to our progressive partners at ADGM for the opportunity. It's a great opportunity for Abu Dhabi itself, and in time more broadly across the UAE and the wider Middle East. Again, we're a blockchain-based capital markets company focusing on capital markets and emerging markets. We're looking to reinvent the investment process by harnessing blockchain. In doing so, allowing ourselves and our participants to reduce risk, cost, and transactional inefficiency in the current model. A model which also happens to be more convoluted and archaic than one could ever imagine, as I'm sure some of you are aware. As disciples of the FinTech agenda, you do not need me to tell you how convoluted many aspects of the current capital markets life cycle are. Indeed, financial services more broadly. It's certainly not the way you would build a financial market ecosystem today. It's not the way our children will expect it to work in the future. And therefore, we must, as responsible financial professionals, innovate. Arguably, financial services has not adapted to the internet age. Now, again, I know you don't need me to tell you that. You are all embracing FinTech, or at least cognizant of the impact of any number of new technologies to challenge the status quo. Now, if we accept that financial services, and particularly financial markets, is one of the most important industries to any economy and to society as a whole, how can it be that these industries and subsectors of finance have allowed themselves to become so cumbersome and so inefficient? Now, some may say it's impossible to stay at the top of your game for an indefinite period. Recent research argues that the average lifespan of a company is around 7 years, even for the most successful ones. Such is the pace of innovation and progress. Now, it's true, if it's true, that invention is the mother of necessity. That's great. But if you're an incumbent and there's no perceived need to change, then why not carry on as you are? And I think that's the mindset of many incumbents in long-term wholesale industries. Successful, dominant companies have a tremendously poor record of being able to innovate or actually be nimble enough to adapt to subtle yet important shifts in the buying behavior of the marketplace. Perhaps they become too bureaucratic, too inwardly facing, too many committees, caught up in the rat race, and creativity slowly draining out of the company, and management never stepping back to view the shifting sands. Perhaps there are too many vested interests in the management team to rock the boat, again, in their view, unnecessarily. The reality is it's most likely a combination of all of these and more. And that's fine by me, because such circumstances create opportunities for others that are more nimble, those that can visualize a different reality, the innovators, such as yourselves in this room. Now, I think back to a time when I was a young lad, and in my mind, I wanted for nothing. We wasn't a well-off family, but I thought I had it all. I had all the technology I could ever imagine needing. And if you look to the slides, here we go. The first one, I had my handy-sized Motorola mobile phone. Moving on from that, there it is, the Sony Walkman. Not just any Walkman. As you can see, this was one with Megabass. I was kind of spoiled as a kid. And yes, that is the one with the freeband graphic equalizer and the rewind button. So amazing stuff. I had a JVC cassette and CD player, so advanced it not only displayed a digital format, it was also a clock radio and alarm clock all in one. This was mind-blowing stuff. But most importantly for me, I had a brand new Kodak camera for capturing all those special moments. However, in our family, it was my dad who was really smug, and rightly so, because he had this, the new CodaVision Series 2000 camcorder. We were blessed, spoiled even. What more could we ever need? Technological innovation, it seemed, had peaked. Now, let's fast forward to today. These days, I just carry a smartphone. But more interestingly, a smartphone made by some firm called Apple. Now, who are they, and where did they come from? Motorola made my old mobile phone, Sony made the Walkman, JVC made the digital clock radio, Kodak made the camera and camcorder. So what happened? Well, put simply, while these firms were building better Walkmans, better digital clock radios, and better cameras, Apple was ripping up the rulebook and questioning everything. No vested interest, no material revenue streams in any of these products to consider capitulating. First with the advent of the MP3 player, or the iPod, and then the iPhone. And let me be clear, I'm not trying to beat up on JVC and Motorola and Kodak. I say this is an incumbent symptom of a symptom of many incumbents in that size of industry. Nonetheless, the iPod and then the iPhone were game changers. They were game changers that incumbents did not see happening around them, but perhaps they couldn't even imagine. Apple wasn't making incremental improvements to existing thinking and processes. They were totally reimagining the possibilities. More importantly, and a word I'm sure you're all aware of as FinTech people, they pivoted. They pivoted from simply building the Macintosh PC to becoming a full-on entertainment, software, and mobile phone company. Now, I can see what you're all thinking, especially the team from ADGM. What the hell has this got to do with Abu Dhabi as a FinTech Nexus? And that is a very good question. So, quite simply, the mindset I've alluded to above, at a corporate level, I believe is true on many levels. Let's consider the same set of circumstances playing out at a sovereign or jurisdictional level. Equal to the unprecedented rate of technological change is the extent of political uncertainty across the globe. Dominant superpowers, for as long as anyone alive can remember, find themselves contemplating a new wave of politics, necessitating a rethink of policy both domestically and internationally, how they relate to other countries, and who they do business with. Brexit, I'm sick of hearing about that, to be honest, as an Englishman. Brexit has taken over so much of the political agenda of the UK and Europe, it appears as though there are no other agenda items in Europe right now. Again, the distraction of being large and cumbersome create opportunities for the more nimble and agile. And as we all know, it's easier to change direction in a speedboat than it is an oil tanker. Now, developing economies, they're racing ahead and gaining ground, while Brexit, the US, and other situations play out. That by definition, they've reset the definition, they've reset the definition of market risk, or at least forced investors to recalibrate their own risk profile for one market relative to another. The historical view of a low-risk versus high-risk country has changed. The poles have got closer. Furthermore, instability. Instability is a great leveler in many ways when considering cross-border investments. Let's look at the emerging markets more broadly. Indonesia, China, Turkey, Vietnam, amongst others, have all taken steps to improve their country standing on a global investor basis and to attract inward flows of foreign investment. That said, in my opinion, no region comes close to the Middle East in terms of its ability to provide visionary and progressive policies to favorably position itself as a global business destination for the next generation. The UAE's top-down government policy on digitalization, FinTech, and even at a blockchain level, all help in making the UAE a fantastic business destination. When the management team of EquiChain sat down to decide where to first launch EQX, it didn't take long for us to conclude that Abu Dhabi was the most favorable location for our launch. From a time zone perspective, we felt Abu Dhabi provided the perfect base for us to straddle any number of jurisdictions, not least the emerging markets of Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. But also to do all that with the ability from our group headquarters in London, allowing us to continue driving investor flows from Europe and the Americas to the emerging markets we serve. As one of the most dynamic cities in the world, and as the capital of the United Arab Emirates, in relatively no time, almost within living memory, this emirate has emerged into a cosmopolitan and global metropolis of commerce and global business for major companies the world over. You might say Abu Dhabi has pivoted itself, not unlike Apple. When you couple all of these attributes with a highly educated but relevantly skilled and diverse population, the case for Abu Dhabi grows stronger and stronger as a place to locate a regional office. We have been hugely impressed with the insatiable appetite for innovation that Abu Dhabi continues to display. Not resting on its laurels, nor taking a pause to reflect on the successful transformation I alluded to a moment ago, Abu Dhabi, thanks to a progressive, aligned, and forward-thinking government, is set to remain a progressive and modern city for years to come, at the forefront of global initiatives, including the environmental agenda, while also planning for the next generation of transformation and all the promise that that holds. Naturally, as an employer, the well-being of staff is paramount. As part of our due diligence at EquiChain, when we were considering our first regional office in the Middle East, I was delighted to learn that the World Happiness Report, and yes, there is such a report, ranks the UAE at number 17 out of 156 countries. And as we all know, happy people make good employees, because happy people make things happen. Happiness leads to motivation, and motivation drives innovation. Particularly for me as the CEO of a fintech, I want, one, to be near the major financial center, but also, as importantly, if not more, two, to be close to the seat of government. So much of what we are all trying to do in this room requires the close collaboration with regulators and policymakers. The potential impact of the creation of Abu Dhabi Global Market, a designated international financial center and Abu Dhabi's first financial free zone, cannot be underestimated. In my opinion, ADGM represents a milestone moment in Abu Dhabi's next stage of transformation, and to ensure it achieves its stated aims and objectives of becoming a global leader in not only wealth management, but international financial services more broadly. So please let me summarize. We live in an incredibly exciting time, a time when technological promise and innovation is at an unprecedented level. And now I'm sure every generation says that, but it's particularly true in our case. In fintech alone, the maturing of technologies such as blockchain, alternative intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, distributed ledger technology, so on and so forth, seemingly all in unison, present a once-in-a-century opportunity to fundamentally rethink the very landscape of our economies, societies, and global commerce. Indeed, the very role that we may all play going forward. A time when the barriers to establishing a company are possibly lower than they have ever been. If I look inside EquiChain, we use any number of free technologies to help run the firm globally, from WhatsApp, Google Mail, free teleconferencing apps, low-cost accounting software, you name it. No longer do we need such upfront injections of capital to establish a company worthy of challenging the existing service providers and the existing status quo. And this is a great realization. It's empowering and it's motivating. It means we can all do things that only a few years ago seemed impossible. Now, it's not such great news if you are an incumbent firm operating in a monopolistic way for many years, safe in the knowledge that high barriers to entry would ensure your longevity as an incumbent indefinitely. Nonetheless, this is a time of change, of enormous opportunity. We have to be brave and we have to be nimble. I think much of what I've said may be summarized by Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So, as we draw these amazing 2 days to a close, I say, go out there, build something important, build something that matters, be inspired by Abu Dhabi's own story, never stop innovating. Thank you for listening.